Blame rankings. All right, let's blame who is in who is to blame for what is going on with Michigan right now and the scandal and the PR and everything else going on. I would like to say this is mostly for comedy purposes. So, if you're upset about it, don't get in the comment section like you're a terrible human being. All right. Yes, we are kind of taking a little bit of a jab at Michigan here, but it is also kind of funny because you could also say some of these people on these are probably people that you could thank for helping Michigan win a national championship. So, hey, just it depends on how you look at it. Perspective. All right. Look at it with the right perspective. So that way you don't get mad at us. If you do get mad at us, it's fine. No big deal.
Why is Greg Schiano on the puzzle board here? I've missed the Greg Schiano piece of this.
Well, he was the first one that kind of ignited it in the halftime of that Rutgers game when he said, like, there's something fishy going on out there. And I think he has walked it back recently, or not recently. He walked it back shortly after that and said he was talking about something else. But yeah, I was just kind of going through here and thinking of anything I could that kind of pertained to it. So yes, I do have a vacuum on here. I have a picture of the SBI on here. Ryan Day's brother is on here. So, whatever way you want to go. If you are watching and you have a comment of somebody you think is to blame, please let us know. And we would like to talk about that. There's also some Ohio State accounts that have been known to go after Michigan on this a little bit more on here as well.
We would never.
Yeah, Ohio State fans would never try to go after Michigan. And so
I just chuckled at the Minnesota fan talking about getting hit by a car, and gosh, that's I don't know that I would bat an eye if that happened. I'm just kidding, Minnesota. I'm just kidding.
Philip says Juwan Howard needs to be on the blame board. What did Juwan Howard do? It blame in general for how terrible the basketball program is. Yeah.
Well, he got in a fight with the
board for that though.
Yeah, he got in a fight with the strength coach, and yeah,
he got in a fight with Wisconsin's coach. He and Greg Gard almost came to blows at the handshake line.
And Greg Gard probably would have won that fight.
I'm just realizing I think I put Ben Herbert on here instead of Chris Partridge. I meant to put Chris Partridge. My apologies. They're two bald guys. I got them mixed up. Just imagine the guy next to Jim Harbaugh is Chris Partridge and not Ben Herbert. So my apologies. All right.
At the end of the day, Connor,
go ahead.
You go first.
I was just going to get started with the blame rankings.
Yeah, do it.
Okay. All right. So, Zach, I'm going to let you go first because you were so excited and you're already hinting at your stuff. So I'm going to let you give your number 5 for the blame rankings.
Yeah. So my number 5 is Santa Ono and Warde Manual combined. And that's, for those of you who don't know, that's the president of Michigan and the athletic director for Michigan. I think a lot of the troubles has come from the posture of their leadership. And so the way that Santa Ono and Warde Manual have kind of blindly defended Harbaugh and the football program, and honestly they've come off a bit juvenile. Like they have not come across as high-ranking officials or like high academia. They've honestly come across as adolescent, like prepubescent, annoying people. Like that's probably the nicest way I can put that. And whenever you have leaders who do that, it just raises more suspicion. It just makes you want to find something more and more, which it's just annoying. And so they did nothing to kind of temper things. They did everything to inflame it. And they could have done, I think they could have actually really made things smoother if they just said, oh, there's an investigation. Sure. Let's talk about it. And just shut up. But they didn't.
That makes sense. I could not disagree. There might be one of them on my list. Before we get to Joel's number 5, Eric did say here, hear me out. I blame Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer. Their dominance for the better part of 2 decades caused Michigan to beat Ohio State or die trying, aka cheat to do it. Very much so like Eric, an Ohio State fan, to say it's Ohio State's fault that Michigan's in all this mess because they beat him so many times. I like the way you think, Eric. Good contribution there. Appreciate that.
There's
Joel,
a golf clap in there for that.
Yeah. Joel, you're number 5 for the blame ranking.
Terrell Pryor's gold pants. Terrell Pryor's gold pants have an issue with Ohio State acting like they've never cheated at anything. However, I'm going to go off the board here, and I'm going to blame the owner. I'm going to blame the owner of my favorite NFL team, who, because he's a Michigan man, screwed up and we lost draft picks, and now we're stuck in the black hole that is the concussion-prone Tua Tagovailoa. I'm blaming Stephen Ross for this because he just gives too much damn money to the University of Michigan and gives them too many resources for them to feel like they can get away with murder, or in this case, espionage. So Stephen Ross for probably funding the corporate espionage of this whole ordeal.
Didn't even have Stephen Ross on the bingo board, but Joel's thinking outside the box. I like it.
That's well done, Joel.
My number 5 is Tony Petitti. I feel like some of this could have just been nipped in the bud right away if Tony Petitti would have came out with a little bit of a harsher punishment, rather than the 3-game suspension for Jim Harbaugh. I'm not saying he needed to be punished and, gone for the Big Ten championship game and stuff like that, but I think that you would have had some more people, a little bit feeling better about it if the punishment was dealt a little bit quicker and things were done, without so much rumors and gossip and stuff like that. I feel like Tony Petitti kind of dragged his feet a little bit. So my number 5 is actually nobody related to Michigan. It is just Tony Petitti himself. Zach, you're number 4.
That's a strong pick. That's a really strong pick. I have Jesse Minter and Mike McDonald as 4. And
not Sharon Moore?
Not Sharon Moore. Okay. Because again, he was only had level 2. I actually don't have him on my list.
Had the most to gain. Though.
He did, but if you look at who I think Connor Stalions worked with the most, it seemed to be more the defense. And you look at who, think about the difference between 2018, 2019 Ohio State, Michigan versus 2021 to 2023 Michigan against Ohio State. Think about this. Ohio State scored 118 points in 2 years against vaunted Don Brown defenses without the aid of anybody. And then from 2021 to 2023 with some of the best offenses, with maybe the best quarterback we've ever seen at Ohio State. And they could not get above 27 points. The offense got better for sure, but the real beneficiary was the defense. And that's not to say that Jesse Minter and Mike McDonald weren't great on their own. I think that scheme and their ability to coach was certainly a big piece of that too. But I think that the scandal, if it helped anybody a little bit more, I think it was the defense. And the reality is Minter was implicated as a level 1 offender. So I have them as my number 4s.
Co-4s. I like it. Joel, you're number 4.
See, my number 4 is actually, you put Petitti as your number 5, JR, but I think my number 4 is actually Kevin Warren, who could have killed all of this before he bailed to go steer the Chicago Bears ship. Kevin, because he really was the commissioner who had the initial power to do this and to really investigate it early, because it sounds like some of these allegations came while it was still his watch. And I think he just saw when he let some things slip through his cracks, I think he just cut bait and ran. Kevin Warren's my number 4.
That's strong pick, Kevin Warren. I didn't think so much about that, but that does make sense.
I promise I'll stay on the board for my next picks.
No, it's okay. I am all for any Kevin Warren slander on this podcast as much as possible.
Yes.
So you, what Big Ten coach was Kevin Warren's college teammate?
Ooh,
it's a Harbaugh.
I don't know. Who was it?
Fran McCaffrey and Kevin Warren were on the Penn basketball team together. And
really?
graduates
Okay.
of the Wharton School of Business at Penn University.
Interesting.
I didn't realize that. All right. My number 4 is actually both coordinators, all the coordinators involved. Sharon Moore, Josh Gaddis, Jesse Minter, Mike McDonald, maybe not all of the exact same blame, but just coordinators in general. I mean,
Yep.
how in the world do you have this guy standing next to you and he's just like, hey, here's the play? Like, you never asked him, you never tried to figure out, like, how do you know this dude? And like, you've seen all 22 footage. He tells you, oh yeah, I see it on the all 22. It's like, dude, I watch that stuff and I don't see enough to do that. So how are you? Like,
Yep.
you didn't think to ask just a little bit more about what's going on here. Now, granted, I don't put them as high because it's not their job, right? They're not the head coach. They don't, they probably feel like, if the head coach says it's okay, that's, I guess, foreshadowing my next pick a little bit. But if they're like, if the head coach says it's okay, maybe it's not that big of a deal. But still, like, how do you not ask the question? And if he tells you something, you're like, feel like I understand things a little bit better than, this analyst does. But yeah, that's my number 4. All of the coordinators involved. Your number 3, Zach.
Yeah. My number 3 is the guy that decided to disguise himself into Central Michigan gear. So Connor Stalions, that guy.
At number 3?
Yes.
Wow.
He was certainly the mover and shaker, but I had Minter and McDonald because, to your point, they should have asked questions. I hold people in higher power, like, there's someone that really should have known about this and should have nipped it in the bud. Actually, there's 2 in particular. But the fact that Connor Stalions was the main guy, obviously he's to blame. Obviously he's to blame. I don't need to expound on that.
Yeah. We might need Philip to expound on this one. Biden has dropped out of the presidential race. We've never gotten political here on the Big Ten Huddle, so this is a first. Thank you, Philip. Because of his involvement in the Michigan cheating scandal, was going to be exposed. Nothing to do with the fact that he doesn't know who he is anymore. I'm going to leave the political stuff out of it and just say, if Joe Biden was a part of this and he deserves to be on anybody's top 5 blame rankings, this goes far deeper than I ever would have anticipated. But yes, thank you, Philip, for the blame rankings contribution there. Joel, who is your number 3?
It's hard for me not to go political after something. I cut my teeth as actually a political speechwriter right out of college, so I'm fascinated by that whole world. But I won't go down that road. Yeah, I wrote for a senator. And
Interesting.
So, okay. But I think you have to look at administrations, right? Because any good administration, whether it's a coaching staff, whether it's a political world, no matter what's the most important thing, right? You have to insulate and you have to protect the greatest stakeholders here. So that's why there's nothing sticking to Harbaugh. That's why there's nothing really sticking to Sharon Moore and the coordinators, because plausible deniability was built into this thing from the get-go. And I think that's what motivates my number 1. But what's controlling my number 3 here, and I can't prove anything, but this is a podcast, I don't have to. Christina DeRuyter, the director of on-campus recruiting and football operations for Michigan, you can't tell me my involvement of being a part of coaching staffs as an assistant coach, as a student manager, as a student assistant, those are the people who are given sometimes nebulous objectives to accomplish, and sometimes are left to their own devices to accomplish them. So I'm not saying who ordered the code red of stealing these signals, because let's also be honest, stealing signals is a part of football, and it's a part of sports, and there's legal ways to do it. There's ethical ways to do that. I know that sounds interesting to say there's ethical ways to steal, but there are right ways to do it. Michigan, it appears, did not do the right way. And with Christina DeRuyter now miraculously a part of the staff of the Los Angeles Chargers, I find it hard to believe that she didn't have something to do with facilitating Connor Stalions' ability to execute his objective.
That is a great point.
I lied. I'm going way off the board again, but I'm going Christina DeRuyter.
No, that's great, and I didn't even think of the fact that she had gone to the Chargers. I remember that when you said it, but I was like, wow, okay, yes. Anybody who went to the Chargers or just like left for the NFL in general has a little bit of suspicion in my mind of what could have been going on. So, good pick there. My number 3 is going to be just Jim Harbaugh himself. The dude is the guy in charge. He should have been knowing what his staff was doing. If he sees a little analyst following his coordinators around and, whispering sweet plays into their ears, then, he probably should be investigating it a little bit. I've known some people who were coaches in the college level, not as high as like Ohio State and stuff like that, but the head coach makes it a very important thing that all of the coaches understand the rules, even to the point where sometimes the families of the coaches, it's very important for them to know the rules as well, because they don't know what could be going on with, like, are they using their phone to text a recruit, do this or do something like that, and you're going to incur a punishment if that happens. So I think obviously Jim Harbaugh was not doing a very good job of making sure everybody understood the rules, because not just this, but there was obviously a lot of recruiting issues that was happening too, as got outlined in the ESPN thing. So for me, number 3 is Jim Harbaugh. If nothing else, he should have been educating his staff and making sure they knew these rules. Zach, you're number 2.
For all those reasons, Jim Harbaugh's my number 2.
All right.
And here's the reality. While Connor Stalions did all these things and orchestrated this whole thing, you mean to tell me that Jim Harbaugh never once thought, boy, like, Connor Stalions has gone a lot. Like,
but was he paid
or like
to go to the games?
Well, that's true. But like, he didn't think, oh, like, where was Connor Stalions Friday night, the night before? And like, I know you're not, he probably isn't thinking about high level, like where his analyst is all the time, but like, it was a lot of games and a lot of, like, he's not ever asking, oh, like, I wonder what Connor's doing. Like, or like, I wonder what, I wonder why my coordinators are really listening to Connor Stalions. I wonder why my players are so clued in. I wonder how my analyst is calling plays and calling out formations so well, I might add. Like, at one point or another, he needs to ask that question. And then on top of that, his obstinance time and time and time again, like, everybody says the NCAA has a witch hunt on Jim Harbaugh. The reality is he kind of brought it upon himself with the way he acted. So his behavior was unbecoming, and he didn't pay attention, and he didn't educate his staff. So regardless if it was ignorance or he was compliant or complicit in it, it is his fault ultimately. Like, he is almost the most significant person to blame.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. I already said my stuff and you just added on to it there, so I won't take any more time talking about it, unless Joel is going to have him as his number 2. Joel, who is your number 2?
No, Harbaugh's my number 1. It's his ship.
Okay.
So I know I spoiled it there. So number 2 is Connor Stalions. He did it. No matter what, you mentioned your church had a youth group today, Zach. Like, what's one of the fundamental tenets of that book that you studied at your youth group? Free will. Connor Stalions had free will. He made the choice to execute a bad order. Whether he he came up with the plan himself, or what, at the end of the day, he's the one who made that choice. Connor Stalions is my number 2. Probably could be number 1. I'm guessing he might be number 1 on somebody else's list, but ultimately, it's not his program, but he's the one who did the bad stuff. So Connor Stalions is number 2 for me. And I guess it bothers me that so many people are so quick to poo-poo just really how devious this is. Like, this to me rivals some of the dirtiest play in sports, when you're enlisting intelligence people to record stuff from other games. Now, I'll say this. My first high school game I was a defensive coordinator in, I looked across the sideline at a new coaching staff that our team had never played before. But what I saw over there was their offensive coordinator was actually a guy I played for in college. And he didn't know I was on the sideline. Both of us were new to this whole thing. He was the offensive line coach at the school I played at. And I looked over and I saw the hand signs he was sending into his quarterback, and they were my college offense. I knew every play that was being signaled in because it was the college offense I had coached in and played in. And so I just said to our head coach on the headset, I'm like, Coach, I've got the hand signals here. I'm not calling my defense until I see him call the offense. And that's legal. That's me deciphering his code on the sideline and in game and figuring it out. What Connor Stalions did is he created this staff created a way to gain intelligence early ahead of games and then match it with what they were able to find during the games. And to me, that is so unethical. It is so against the good nature of competition that it's almost inexcusable to me. And so that's why Connor Stalions is pretty high. He's my 1B. I don't even want to call him a number 2. He's my 1B because he could have said no. And then that makes it even worse on Jim Harbaugh to say, well, we're going to find somebody else to do the job. But he said yes, and he's extremely culpable for it.
Joel, all the reasons that you mentioned is why Connor Stalions is number 1 for me. I guess I'll just give my 1 and 2 here since we're doing that. And then Zach, you can give your 1. But for me, Connor Stalions, he's number 1. I mean, he's the one, like you said, Joel, it's free will. Like he was the one that had the decision to be able or to do this. And whether he knew it was against the rules or not, you still have like personal responsibility to say, hey, nobody else is doing this. We don't have anybody sending scouts to our games and recording our sidelines. Why is nobody else doing this? You would think eventually you'd realize, oh, this is something that I shouldn't be doing. On top of that, you have the manifesto and everything else. I mean, like this guy had completely everything about his life was about winning a national title for Michigan. And so for him, that was all he cared about. My number 2 is Warde Manual and really any other administration that's up there. And the fact that like he's not even looking out for some of the stuff. He lost all control with the football program. He had no relationship with Jim Harbaugh where he could work together at all or anything. Jim Harbaugh is actively trying to get him fired by putting a book out, making him look bad. I mean, Jim Harbaugh hates the guy, right? I mean, how do you have a terrible relationship with your football coach who won your school a national championship? How do you have that happen? And he's talking about bring the guy back. And all the while Jim Harbaugh is saying, there's no way I'm coming back, dude. I hate you. There's no way. I'm not coming back. You can pay me the highest salary of anybody in college football. I'm still not coming back. I'd rather go to the Chargers and work with Justin Herbert. And then, which granted, he's a good quarterback, but still, you know what I'm saying? Like he would rather go to the Chargers, go over there because he doesn't want to work with Warde Manual. He doesn't trust Warde Manual. And so for me, that's why Warde Manual was so high, not just because he was the one in charge, but because he just completely botched his relationship with Jim Harbaugh and working together with him. Joel, it looks like you want to say something. What do you want to say?
I just want to know who the last boss Jim Harbaugh had that he left on good terms with.
Oh, that's true.
Because I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's true. Zach, you have given us your top or 5 through 2. I think we have all our 5 from me and Joel now. So who is your number 1? Round us out here.
We need shirts. The NCAA, they stink. And I'm gonna give 2 reasons for it. Because it's a little off the board, but let me give 2 reasons. For one, their gross incompetence before all this set up the reality that people could use their incompetence as a narrative, which allowed the scandal to continue throughout the season. And they didn't pull rank. And when all the evidence was clear and their data gathering, rather than saying, we need to speed this up to make a decision before the playoff, they're like, you know what? We're just going to punt this down the road. We're going to give it to Tony Petitti and the Big Ten and let them handle it, because that's what the NCAA does. They pawn off their bad decisions on people who shouldn't be making decisions, just like COVID. And because of that, Tony Petitti had to make a decision in his first year as Big Ten commissioner that he was not qualified to make. The NCAA should have, pulled up their big boy pants and made a decision. And instead, they kicked it down the road. So that was for starters, their gross incompetence and their inability to execute quickly. The other thing is, because of their incompetence and because of the way that they investigated, it fired up the entire Michigan program and motivated them to go and win a national championship.
By any means necessary.
Right. So, are we talking about this if Michigan wins the Natty? No. But what happened when this whole thing came out and they were incompetent and the NCAA did nothing? Bet. Michigan versus everybody, which they totally stole Ohio against the world. Yes, my Ohio State showing right now. But
Ohio State invented that concept. It had nothing to do with.
I know, but still, I'm just saying.
Don't tell Hannibal as he was going over the Alp.
So I'm being a little of a homer right now, but I do mean this. The NCAA botched this in every way possible. And if they just if they are just a little bit more competent, a little bit more relevant, and they actually act quickly, not only does Michigan not get the motivation from it, but also we're not talking about this at all. It just goes away, and it's not a big scandal anymore. It is a big scandal, but it's muted. But the NCAA, again, is incompetent, and they motivated them to greater heights.
Very true. Very true. Joel, we didn't give you very much time to talk about your number one, Jim Harbaugh. Did you have any comments on Jim Harbaugh at number one for you before we move on?
This whole topic is just exhausting because he's exhausting. He is just an exhausting human being. We've given 35 minutes to a person who is irrelevant to college football as Woody Hayes. Honestly, he might as well be deceased as far as I'm concerned. And I don't mean that. I don't mean literally wish ill will to him physically or mentally or whatever, but it's gone. He's gone forever. Michigan, I think, is going to be good again this year. JJ McCarthy's gone too. Just move on. It's time for the conference to move on from this guy. Sharon Moore is going to do a good job as the head coach there. And let's just let him make a big mistake. Let's let some of these guys make big mistakes. Because if there's one thing I've learned is that hubris always fails. And if there's one thing that we know about the team up north, as you guys like to call them, they think pretty highly of themselves, whether it's their dental school or whether it's their rowing program. So it's just one of those things where Michigan's going to be Michigan. They're going to do Michigan things. Let's just watch them either a feast or famine here. And let's talk about who's going to be the quarterback at Maryland. I think that I'm much more excited to talk about that, I think, than any more of this Michigan mumbo jumbo.
Great transition, Joel.
That's
You're
well
a pro.